Welcome to the Chapters of Grace podcast. My name is Sarah.
And I'm Heather, and we're two friends collecting stories of God's grace and sharing our stories along the way.
Welcome back to the Chapters of Grace podcast. We are so honored that you decided to come back and listen to this episode today. Heather and I are super excited about today's topic. We really felt that it was important to talk about community and surrounding yourself with believers who can support you and love you, and just really dive into how that is beneficial and how that has been God's will for us from the start.
And how it's changed our lives and how we think it can change yours too.
Absolutely. We're going to just dive into a scripture really quick, and that is Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. And the Lord said, "It is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him." And of course, that scripture itself is talking about when God created Eve for Adam. But I really think that shows God's heart in that, you know, from the start of creation, he knew that it was not good for us to be alone and that we needed people. And, you know, he specifically made Eve for Adam, but I think that is part of a bigger picture that God wants us to have people around us who can encourage us and pray with us and for us not to be alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that we're ever intended to do life alone. And, you know, I think the enemy comes in a lot when you're alone and can really mess with your mind and your thoughts. And when you have someone with you to help uplift you, it really gives that enemy less of a hold.
Absolutely. And, you know, the Bible tells us that the enemy comes in to kill, steal, and destroy. And I think it's in those moments of isolation that he is going to have so much more of a hold over you, because you don't have someone telling you, I've been through that, I've walked through that. And it's just a lot easier when you're alone for him to really just fill your mind with lies and deception and keep you in bondage. We also think it's really important for just so many aspects of family life and having children.
Yeah.
To have community around you. I mean, they say it takes a village.
And it absolutely does.
It takes 3 villages.
Yeah, for sure. All the aunts, all the uncles, grandmas, grandpas.
And I think it's so important to have people around you that you know are representing Christ and would show them the love of Christ just as you would, surrounding you. You know, that's within their teachers at you know, in Sunday school, and, you know, knowing that your pastor is, you know, going to encourage your children, and your friends at church are going to encourage your children. Just like, you know, Heather and a lot of our friends at church, they do that for our kids, and that means a lot to us.
Yes, absolutely. We had a situation with our oldest daughter a few months ago. She was going through a really tough patch, and just emotionally, things were hard for her. And I remember, like, you made a point to buy her a gift if she had, like, so many good days at school and so many good days. And that really, like, was a shifting point for her. Like, there's other people that care about me here. They love me, and they, like, gifts is definitely her love language. And that really spoke to her heart. And she still talks about the time that Miss Sarah got her a gift and still plays with it. And so that just really spoke volumes to me and to her. And your kids they're influenced by the people that you let into their lives.
Yes.
And I want people who love my children and care for them to be the ones that surround them.
Absolutely.
And we have this big group of people, like you said, who show up for birthday parties and special events. And, you know, even just, hey, you want to go grab an ice cream on a Sunday evening because they know she likes, you know, ice cream. And so that's important. Like, we pour into them at home, and we have people who pour into their lives as well. And I think that's really important to find in a church community, a friend community. It speaks volumes about the people that you let around your kids.
Absolutely. And I think it's important too, if you don't have kids, to even surround yourself with, if you go into a church and, you are friends with people who have kids and maybe you don't have kids, I think it's so important to love on their kids, because it means so much to me when people love our two children and show them that, they're important and they're special. And, I guess like you said, even, I didn't realize that it had made such an impact on her that day. But that was just, they're also my children.
Right,
in a way.
exactly.
I love them like my own children.
Right.
And one thing I love that Heather does is she truly treats my children like her children, but in all ways. It's in a loving way. When they're doing something crazy, she looks at them, she's like, hey, you need to cut it out. But I appreciate that, because I know that she's doing that out of such a great place in her heart, that
right.
she wants to love them and guide them. Mm-hmm. And, they call her Auntie Heather and Uncle Sean. Mm-hmm. And I just love that they get to have such a bigger family than what we have at our church.
Right.
And we truly have one of the best communities at our church.
So I actually reached out to a friend of ours and someone that we attend church to, and asked them what community meant to them. And they said community is not just who you attend church with, it's who you entrust your life to. And I think that's really important. Every aspect of our lives is intertwined with our church family, with our friends. And like our kids, like you said, they know these people. They know they're going to show up for them. They know that they're going to be there for them. They also know they're going to correct them.
Yes.
If they get out of line and not let them act crazy. Mm-hmm. They know Auntie Heather loves them, but we're not going to act crazy.
That's so true. I think it's just really important to find the right community for you too. It was by the grace of God that we landed at Faith Renewed, and we have such an incredible pastor, leadership team, an incredible congregation of people that even if you barely have interacted on a Sunday, I truly believe that they would drop whatever they were doing if you were in need. And they are just that kind of people. They rally around you, just very good-hearted, genuine people. And I think it's important that you find that community of believers who will support you and pray with you and be there for you. And I know you had an experience of being in a church at a time where you were
absolutely
surrounded by people, but you didn't feel like you could go to them or approach them with what you were struggling with.
Right. And like the issue there was that, everything was kind of like stiff and untouchable, and we lived a Sunday morning kind of church, and then it was left, and then there was no like outreach after that. And it was kind of like one of those things where you always felt like a burden if you reached out or if you needed help or anything like that. And that left me with a lot of wounds and a lot of like hardships there. And we live in a world that says you can live on your own and you can't trust anyone, but that's the opposite of what the Lord teaches. And so I think it's really important that that like not all churches are that way, not all communities are that way. And there are people, and even though people have good times, people will fail us. And I think that's something that we need to understand as well. Like people are not perfect.
Right.
And there is grace in those situations. But like you said, like Faith Renewed is one of those places where like we always joke and say like there's somebody there at that church that knows just about everything. Like, they're willing to help widows, and if you have had a baby, they jump in and we feed them. And it just really warms my heart to know, like, it's not just prayer. Like, it's not just shallow. Like, it's action. It's action. Like, if people are saying, I'm praying with you, like, they're on their knees before the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you even talking about how it was, you felt like you were being a burden to people. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, the Bible tells us, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. So it's not okay to make people feel like their burdens are not valid, because the Lord calls us to carry those burdens with one another. That's why he doesn't want us to be alone. And
right.
I think if you are in a place where you feel like you can't bring your burdens to the people around you, then that's a little bit of a problem, whether that's the community that you're in or if that's the culture that they've created there of not being able to come and ask for prayer. And I would hope that that's not happening. But
Right.
you should definitely feel like you can go and talk to your leaders and your pastors and your community of church friends and family around you.
Right. And if you've ever been hurt before, I know, like, I speak from experience, like, that is hard to open up and trust people. But trusting people has been the best decision I've ever made. I think as a woman, it's hard sometimes to make friends. And it's hard because the world says that, we're all catty.
We have to be
and we
against
don't
each
get along.
other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to be against each other, that we can't form real lasting friendships.
And unity.
And even though, like, you and I may be close and we may have, 17 other women, like, we may not be as close to each woman, but we still love each other.
Yes.
And we still do life together. And, there's different aspects. Like, we've talked about, we have mom friends,
Yes.
who are there, like, to text at 3 a.m. and say, my kid's sick, what do I do? And then I have, friends who may not be in the same walk of life that I am, but they love me and they pour into a different part of me. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And I think it's important, too, to find community where you are in life. Don't feel like just because you don't have kids or you're not married or
Right.
or wherever you are in that place, don't let that keep you from finding community.
Right.
I think a lot of churches have a wide range of groups and areas where you can get connected for that reason, because they want people to feel like they have a place, and you do have a place.
Right.
And don't let the enemy make you feel like you don't. I think during this craziness that we've lived in with the pandemic, a lot of times it was hard to attend church, or we couldn't attend church because maybe there was closures, or there was a lot of, just fear of the unknown. And
Yeah.
I think the enemy really worked in that fear to keep people separated. And, I know a lot of people may have stayed home from church, or, stopped serving in areas, stopped going to different, small groups or faith groups. And I just want to encourage you. I really think that the enemy tried to really keep fear dwelling within people to keep them separated, because that's where he thrives. The enemy wants nothing more than to keep us isolated and to keep you thinking that you're the only person struggling. You're the only one feeling depressed. You're the only one in fear. You're the only one in bondage. No one else can know. He wants to keep that shame over you.
Right. And I think, too, if you, obviously have concerns, safety concerns and things like that, like, obviously we must be cautious.
Absolutely.
But there's ways. There's
Yeah.
ways of connecting with
Yes.
people, and you don't have to just stay alone with your thoughts and, you're the way that the enemy gets to you. You
Yeah.
don't have to stay alone. Like, there's different
Absolutely.
ways.
And I really think that it's important, if you're not, to get connected at a church. If you're trying to find your home church, really pray about where to go and really just seek where your community is, where that lands you.
And it's so important. And I don't think that, like I said before, I've watched when people live life alone and they don't have any friends and they don't have anyone that they connect with. It just seems like such a lonely life. And I just want everyone to realize that there is so much more. Like, it really is such a great thing that the Lord has given us. He doesn't want us to be alone.
I think for us, it was such a turning point in our marriage when we found our church and we found other couples. And I remember when I became friends with someone that goes to our church, it was because we had a similar, situation happen in our marriage. And it was such a relief to know that someone understood where I was coming from. It was such a relief to have someone just to talk to when you're kind of harboring things in and you're just letting, anger and bitterness and all of these things just, it's just good to have someone to talk through things with and process things with. And that was really such a turning point for me, knowing that I had someone else. And we had never really had friendships that were in the same phase of life as we were, you know, and I think that was part of the identity crisis that I was having a little bit. We were always just in these different friend groups, and so that was just very confusing for us and conflicting to us. And it was when we found our community at church and we had people there that were just like-minded with what we believed and were there to help us and support us and pray with us and kind of finish that leg of struggle that we were going through. And I mean, we had people that we called at 11 o'clock at night because we were, you know, we needed someone to talk through an issue with us, and they showed up and they came.
Right. And I think too, it's important to note that you can be like-minded with a believer, but they don't exactly have to be in the same stage of life that you are in.
Absolutely.
You know, like you said earlier, like we have single friends who pour into our children as well, and they love our kids and would show up
and add so much value.
And they add so much value, right? And our kids love them, and they are special to them. And just because you're not exactly in the same walk of life, the same stage of life, doesn't mean you don't add value.
And whether that's also, you know, being in community with people who have been married a lot longer than you.
Right.
You know, seek wisdom, seek that advice. Parents who have older children, they can pour into you about where they've walked with their children. You know, don't eliminate somebody out, like you said, because they're not in the exact same walk of life. There's so much wisdom to be had with people's experiences. And I think that's how God's grace works.
Right.
He allows people to pour into you. And I know that people want to pour into us when they've been through what we've been through. And, you know,
I think you're right. I think we kind of segue into this, that we have something at our church called faith groups. It's our version of small groups.
Yes.
And I actually am one of the leaders of the women's group, and
she does a great job.
Thanks. But it has been so refreshing, because I was just talking to a friend today that we have women in our group from like 25 to 27 to 75.
Yes.
So these are all different walks of life,
yes,
all different stages of life. But the great thing is we can all come together with the shared, you know, want to get closer to the Lord, the shared hunger,
yes,
of wanting community and being together and just building that trust with each other. And I think that's really important, like having a safe space to just share and be trustworthy and just have that community
and unity
among
women.
Yes,
it's incredible.
It's been one of the joys of my life. Yes. It's just been so wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, if your church, I'm sure your church probably has small groups. If you're not ready to jump into that, I mean, just go to church, you know, when you can. Go Wednesdays, go Sundays, serve if you can. That was kind of a way that my mom got connected at our church, was she started serving, and that, you know, allowed her to meet people, and then that led her to coming to your small group.
Yeah.
And, you know, before that, she felt very isolated because I think it's hard sometimes to talk to people when you kind of have a quick interaction between services, or, you know, people are, you know, usually have plans on Sunday or whatnot. I don't think anybody means anything negative by it. Sometimes it's just hard to connect that way. That's why it's so important to try to find a small group or a faith group, or try to go and serve in an area where you feel God is leading you. Then you're going to be with other people that also serve in that area and can be part of, you know, your life in that way.
Right. And I think it's important to be intentional with how you know, want to speak with people, and you want to like get together and join in with things that are happening. Like, just be intentional about it. And, you know, and I think that's a challenge to everyone, to be intentional with branching out yourself and really just reaching out to maybe the person that doesn't exactly, you know, look like you, or, you know, have the same like-mindedness as far as like hobbies or, you know, stage of life, but just to reach out and like take a chance on somebody. You may never know what that friendship will butt into. And I think that you and I met kind of that way. Like, you met at the group, and I took a chance and said, hey, you want to come over? And it just blossomed into this beautiful friendship that has just meant so much to me. And I think the same thing with a lot of the women friendships in our church. So
absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that bonded both of us was we both have children with allergies.
Right.
And having the wisdom and knowledge from someone who had a child a little bit older than mine that had already walked down that path and knew the fear, knew the anxiety, knew how scary it was to have a child with allergies. It was very comforting and good for my soul to talk to somebody who understood that, because not everybody does, and that's okay.
Right, because until you live it, you don't know.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah. There's a whole nother level to your child's life being at risk because they might accidentally eat something. That's a whole nother ball
That's
game.
a whole nother
That's
podcast
a whole nother episode.
Right. But it did. It bonded us. I was like, I've been waiting for this to share my knowledge. Yes. Like, you know, I felt like Superwoman. I was like, I can answer your questions.
Yeah. It was a game changer for me in that walk with our child with the allergy. Right. It showed me this is possible to do. And that might be where you're at. Whatever that looks like in your life, whatever that challenge is, there's somebody else out there that has walked through it, has done it, and they can say, you're going to get through this because I've done it, and this is how we're going to do it together.
Right. Absolutely.
So I just really hope that you guys feel encouraged to find community. If you have a community around you, just tell them how much you love them and just show them some gratitude. And like Heather said, just be really intentional with the people around you. If you feel led or called to reach out to someone new, please do. You never know who may be struggling with something, and you could just be such a light of Jesus to them. And that's really all we want at the end of the day. We just want our lives to be reflective of the Lord, and we know that it's impossible to reach out to every single person at your church, but I really think that the Lord, you know, is just calling out for us to just show love and kindness and be intentional and, you know, maybe hug somebody new that you've never hugged before, maybe start up a conversation, and you never know where that could lead. It might lead you to being besties with your friend doing a podcast or, you know, being a prayer partner or being encouraging. You might even just have an encouraging word for them that could be such a life-changing thing. You just really never know how the Lord is going to use you and your experience. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing about God. That He will do it. Absolutely. We also wanted to take a moment to just thank you guys for leaving us reviews and ratings. And we just would really love if you could give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review on Spotify or Apple, also on YouTube. It really helps us get our podcast out there and get more listeners, and just being able to spread God's truth and love and grace to as many people as we can. And this review was from Nana B 3 and 3. It says, "These are so incredible. Thank you for being brave enough to share your story so you can help others who are struggling in the same areas. Thank you for allowing God to use you." With the quote, "Grace isn't just forgiveness. It is forgiveness fueled by surrender." Amy E. Spiegel. So thank you so much for that review. And we love when we get these encouraging words. Words of affirmation is Heather's love language.
It really is.
So please give her those words of affirmation. Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, if you want to reach out on social media, we are on Instagram and on Facebook at Chapters of Grace Podcast. We try to post content at least once a week. New episodes coming up. You can share your prayer requests, reach out that way. Praise reports. We love to interact with you there. So if you would just like and share with your followers, we just want to get the message of God's grace out as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening, and may His grace see you through until next time.
Thank you for listening, guys. Thank you for listening to the Chapters of Grace podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, and a 5-star rating. Also, follow us on social media at Chapters of Grace podcast.